Hey guys, me Sam Stein, managing editor at the Bulwark. I'm here with Tim Miller. We are going to be talking about the tragedy that happened in New Orleans and potentially relatedly in Las Vegas. Before we get into it, as always, please subscribe to our feed, like the video, share it. Engagement matters for this type of stuff. So, what we want to talk about today is the tragedy itself a little bit, and then, as we tend to do here, the politics around it. Um, in particular, something that's kind of got the attention of myself, Tim, a lot of others, is just how Donald Trump has responded to what happened in New Orleans. Now, as we sit here today, it's 15 dead, dozens injured, horrible, horrific attack, likely inspired by ISIS. But we didn't know all the details yesterday when it initially became clear that we had witnessed this tragedy. And within hours of it happening on, or at least the news emerging of it on January 1st, Donald Trump came out of the gate and he posted that this was, in essence, what? Someone who had crossed the border illegally. Yeah, that was basically, I think he got it from Fox News. It was just blatantly wrong. And it was pretty apparent quickly that it was wrong, but he hasn't corrected it. In fact, he's kind of tripled down on it. And I guess, Tim, let's start with you and then I'll give my thoughts. But like, what did you make of that impulse um, by him and the fact that it happened so quickly and what it says about where we're going here?
Yeah, I look. I mean, it is insane that we are in this place where the person that is the president elect is just popping off on social media before we know anything. I mean, I know that is kind of our world now, where people give their opinions about mass murders in this country that happen way too often, like before we actually even know anything. Always in these instances, this is why we're cautious about this at the Bulwark. Like, people within areas of responsibility have to be cautious. Like, things develop. You get bad information, little bits of information trickle out. When we first learned about this guy, once the name came out yesterday, you say inspired by ISIS. Like, it seemed at that time like it was maybe even more, connected to global terrorism than it kind of seems now. And I think maybe it might seem differently tomorrow, but like, based on what we know now, this Jabbar, the person that committed this crime, was potentially is a person that had major personal problems in their
Yeah,
life,
a
and
psychiatric break or something like
yeah,
that.
had
Yeah.
and then ended up kind of putting up the ISIS flag. Like, I mean, it could have been the Hezbollah, it could have been any flag, right? Like, that this person gets radicalized and sort of just co-ops ISIS maybe more than inspired. So look, this stuff develops. You want to be clear. You want to give people the facts. That is the responsibility of people, who are supposed to be spreading information and in complex developing tragedies such as this. So to have the president-elect like acting like the most irresponsible person on social media, immediately going out to demagogue a group, and this is what he posted. Let's pull it up here. When I said that the criminals coming in are far worse than the criminals we have in our country, that statement was constantly refuted by Democrats and the fake news media, but it turned out to be true. It's like, what? How did it? In no way did it turn out to be true. Why, after a tragedy where 15 Americans are dead, are you like attacking the fake news media in your original, and Democrats in your original response and politicizing this? Like, what we know about the situation is that the perpetrator was born in America. He served in the U.S. Army and converted to Islam and was possibly radicalized, in that sense. So talking about radical Islamic terror, sure, again, do it responsibly, but there might be a way to engage that. The idea that this person was a criminal coming in from the country was just false. It was based on some Fox News report that the car that was used had crossed Eagle Pass at the border at some point, and he does this, but he's and as you're saying, like, he's tripling down on it, and so are the people around him. Like,
Yeah. That's what kills me is like well, that's not, I guess, what kills me. I guess the things that really bother me are one, just the instinct to immediately put it into the context of like, oh, I was right. Like the political context. It's like,
yeah. Yeah.
it doesn't
15 people dead. Your first instinct is, aren't I smart? It's
it's like,
like,
look at me. I was right. And it's like I mean, I get like the impulse to a degree, but not really. And then on top of that, to then not sort of correct the record. I mean, if you were a shit poster online and like this was like your job, fine. Like, whatever, do your thing. But if you're the incoming president and you can't just control the impulse, and then when you get it wrong, at least correct the record, that's problematic. And it's not just that he's not correcting the record; he's like actively now insisting that he was right. And he literally posted in the third person at like what 12:08 this morning. Trump was right about everything. No, he was wrong. Like, you literally got it wrong. And he's continued to say that this is all about open borders. And I'm not going to be absolute about it. I'm not going to say it's not possible that down the road we find out that, like, something happened around the border. Maybe this guy was radicalized or went to Mexico. I don't know. I don't know what I don't know. I just don't know what I don't know. But I'm not going to also shout off and be like, in fact, this confirms every element of my worldview, and therefore you should like worship at my feet. No. And this is just, I find this to be like troubling behavior. I think it's even more troubling because he's out of power. But like, let's say this happened when he was president and when he did control the Justice Department and the FBI. And he does want it to be affirmed that this was in fact related to the border. Like, what's the pushback? How do you get to the reality in that situation?
So here's something just we already know. These guys are desperate to politicize these tragedies to target certain groups. Like, and so if you are, the incoming FBI director, Kash Patel, or you work for Kash Patel and you are an FBI person giving a briefing somewhere out in the world after a tragedy, what your bosses up the chain want. That if it is an immigrant, that if it is somebody who is trans, less so than in 2016, radical Islamic terror. But if they're Muslim, then the bosses are going to want you to publicize that element of this, and to play it up, and to focus on it, and to downplay it if the perpetrator is a white nationalist or a far right extremist or something else. And the MAGA world and Trump feel like the inverse has been happening, and so they want like cosmic penance for the too much attention that was given to January 6th or whatever they think that they're aggrieved about. And so we already know like that is going to happen, that they're going to at minimum put their thumb on the scale to emphasize certain types of crime, to rationalize the political agenda.
Yeah, we're seeing like Mike Johnson this morning is out there. Let's play the clip because he's just echoing exactly what Trump said, and he knows at this point that it's just not true. But, everything that's come out from the authorities is told him it's not true. But here he is. It's what he said.
Let me say something else that's obvious, and I don't know if enough attention is being paid to this, but we all know that for the last 4 years, the Biden administration has been completely derelict in its duty. The congressional Republicans, we here in the House and the Senate, have repeatedly asked the DHS under the Biden administration about the correlation, the obvious concern about terrorism and the wide open border. The idea that dangerous people were coming here in droves and setting up potentially terrorist cells around the country. We have been ringing the alarms. We impeached DHS Secretary Mayorkas in the House over that very issue and others related to it. So this is a big concern. They told us, Lawrence, for 4 years that the number one threat was so-called racially motivated extremism. It was nonsense. This is the thing that we were all concerned about. This is why we raised the alarms. This is why we passed H.R. 2, the strongest border security act ever passed by Congress. And Chuck Schumer and the Democrats in the Senate would not put that through and make it into law. The Biden administration has a lot to account for here, and we see now in glaring view of everybody that this dereliction of duty has real consequences. It's a concern, and it will be an ongoing concern for some time.
This is so fucking outrageous, Sam. It's just, the tell, the smarmy smirk, but the tell is that he says this is obvious several times. If you're about to say something like, "Oh, this is obvious," as a politician, they got BS coming after that. But like the thing that pisses me off is, like you said, it's just not true, right? It's like we're making this about migrant crime when there's no evidence of that. Again, maybe evidence might come up in the future.
We just don't know.
There's no evidence of it right now. This has anything to do with the border. This is an American citizen born in Texas who served in the military. Number two, then to use this to make the point I was just making, to minimize what he called racially motivated violence, the white national, white extremist violence, to say that is not the problem. This other thing is the problem.
Right.
Well, it's like what happened in El Paso happened. What happened in Buffalo at the grocery store happened.
Tree of Life.
Tree of Life. South Carolina, Dylan Roof. These white nationalist, far-right extremists committing acts of mass murder, they all happen. It doesn't mean that other things don't, that migrants don't commit crime.
It's your point. It's all ledger. It's like, oh, well, they say this, so we have to disprove that, and it's just like, to them, to a lot of people, it's just all a game. And I was watching John Kennedy, the senator from Louisiana, yesterday at the press conference.
My great senator. He's very focused.
I mean, he just took the time to make a snide remark about the NBC News about being on the right and how that must be uncomfortable for them.
And the NBC's over here on the right.
Oh, that's an unusual position.
I don't get it.
You wouldn't.
It's like such a stupid joke, and it's like you couldn't just control it for like a couple hours. And then the other thing that look, obviously Biden's got his problems, and he should have been out there a little bit more earlier, probably. And it's very difficult to watch him in this moment because you're just sort of like, you see he's frail and all that stuff. But there was this online hankering. He's like, "Where's Joe Biden? Where's Joe Biden? Why is he not speaking to us?" And I'm just thinking, well, he's probably just trying to gather some data and facts and figure out what the hell's going on before going out and talking to the public. Obviously, it's a push and pull. You want more earlier, but to be honest, I appreciate the idea that you wait for clarity and facts, and we're not going to have that in the next 4 years for sure. We're just not going to have that because it's always going to be rushing into the cameras, trying to control the narrative rather than letting the facts dictate what you say.
And it's across the board. I mean, with Trump himself, it all stems from him. But, his son, Don Jr., was posting about how Biden's parting gift to us is migrant terror. Hawley was tweeting about Mayorkas. We just showed Johnson. It's across the board. That they want to use this horrific event before we even know all the victims, not even all the victims' names are out, to advance a political agenda based on fabrications. The whole thing is just sick.
All right. Well, we'll leave it there. It's upsetting in multiple ways. Obviously, the primary way is that 15 people tragically died. Just bringing in the new year. Horrible, horrible. I know you were down there in Louisiana and New Orleans. Hopefully, everything is calming down a little bit. But yeah, I mean, tough times all around.
It is. And I guess my last thing on this, to your point about how, look, there's always going to be uncertain information, developing information. There's certain ways that it's important to give sometimes piecemeal information, right? So just one example here in New Orleans is there were reports yesterday that there were possible IEDs around.
Right.
So there was a lot of
panic,
consternation, worry. I mean, panic might be overstated, but worry, among my friends on social media and people that are like, "Oh man, what? I maybe shouldn't go down to the French Quarter. Maybe something hadn't detonated," and that was information that was coming from the FBI because you don't know, right? If people left backpacks around, they've got to go and check all of that out and confirm or deny. So it's important to note, because if there were, it would be good for people to show caution, right? So at times you get partial information out that is given for a reason to advance public safety, not given for a reason to, whatever, exacerbate a political agenda. So, I do think, thank God that does not seem to be the case at this point, and folks here are trying to go back about their lives, but it's pretty tough.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, hearts with you in your city. And thank you all for tuning into this. Appreciate it. We will talk to you later. As always, do subscribe. Take care.